You would not confess to a crime you did not commit. That is what you believe. It is also, almost certainly, wrong. Somewhere in Petersburg, a man is signing a paper that will end his life. He did not do what it says he did. He knows this. He signs anyway. You have already decided this could never be you. That certainty is the first thing that has to go. This is not a video about a criminal. It is about the room that makes anyone into one on paper, whether they did it or not. Fyodor Dostoevsky spent 4 years in a Siberian prison camp for a crime that was, technically, only belonging to the wrong circle of men. He watched what confinement does to a mind long before he ever wrote a novel about it. What he found was this: guilt is not a fact you discover about yourself. It is a pressure that can be manufactured in anyone, including the innocent. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov commits an actual murder. That part is simple. What is not simple is what happens afterward, inside him, for the following 400 pages. He is not caught by evidence. There is almost none. He is caught by his own mind, which will not stop rehearsing the crime until confession feels like relief rather than ruin. This is the part every retelling gets wrong. They call it conscience. It is not that simple, and it is not that noble. Conscience is calm. This is not calm. This is a mind that cannot carry its own weight anymore and is looking for somewhere to set it down. That difference matters because it means the mechanism does not require guilt to exist. It only requires exhaustion. And exhaustion can be built deliberately in a room with a chair and enough hours. Investigators have known this for longer than psychology has had a name for it. Keep a person awake long enough, isolated long enough, and uncertain long enough, and the question stops being, did I do this? It becomes, what do I have to say to make this stop? Those are different questions. Your mind, right now, cannot reliably tell you which one it is answering. You think you would know the difference between confessing because it is true and confessing because you simply cannot bear the room anymore. You would not. In 1969, a psychologist named Saul Kassin began studying something that had already ruined thousands of lives quietly, one interrogation room at a time. He found that a meaningful share of proven false confessions were not extracted through torture or threat. They were extracted through patience. Hours of calm, repeated suggestion, a hand on the shoulder, the phrase said gently, again and again. We already know. This will be easier if you just say it. It is not called torture because it does not look like torture. It looks like kindness. That is the part your mind is least prepared for. You have rehearsed resisting cruelty. You have never rehearsed resisting kindness that wants something from you. Kassin ran a study. Ordinary people, no criminal history, brought in and falsely accused of damaging a computer through carelessness. They had not done it. Many of them signed statements saying they had. Some of them afterward described actually believing it, not pretending, believing. This is the mechanism Dostoevsky described in a novel before any psychologist put a number on it. The mind under sustained pressure does not defend the truth. It defends its own exhaustion, and it will sacrifice almost anything to end the pressure, including its own record of events. You call this weakness when you see it in someone else on the news. Sit with that judgment for a moment because it is about to be turned back toward you. Here is the mechanism, named plainly. First, isolation. Remove a person from anyone who could confirm their version of events, and their own memory starts to feel less solid than the version being offered to them. Second, fatigue. A tired mind stops asking whether something is true and starts asking only whether it can be over. Third, certainty performed by someone else. When another person states your guilt as settled fact, calmly, repeatedly, your own uncertainty starts to feel like the strange position to hold. Fourth, a way out that costs less than staying in. Confession stops being surrender. It starts to feel like the only door in the room. None of these four require you to be foolish. None of them require you to be weak. They require you to be a mind, operating under conditions minds were never built to withstand. This is where the story stops being about a man in a Petersburg cell, because you already do this. Not in an interrogation room. In your own head, on an ordinary evening with no one else present. Think of the last time you apologized for something you were not actually sure you had done. Not because you had reviewed the evidence and concluded guilt, because the silence in the room had gone on long enough that saying sorry became the fastest way to end it. You did not confess to a crime. You confessed to an accusation which is not the same thing and which your mind, under enough silence, will treat as identical. Think of every time you have said under pressure some version of, "Fine, it was me. Whatever you need, can we just stop talking about this now?" That sentence has ended arguments you were, in fact, correct about. You did not do it because you changed your mind about the facts. You did it because the exhaustion had a price and paying it was cheaper than being right. Now scale that up. A workplace investigation, a relationship ending in a kitchen at 2 a.m, a police officer, calm, patient, telling you this will go easier if you just help us understand what happened. You believe your mind would hold the line there, the way it believes it would hold the line everywhere. It has never actually been tested. That is the only reason the belief has survived this long. Dostoevsky did not write Raskolnikov as a monster. He wrote him as a fairly ordinary young man, poor, proud, isolated, tired in a way that had gone on for months before the murder ever happened. That exhaustion did the work before the acts ever did. By the time Porfiry, the investigator, sits down across from him, he barely needs evidence at all. He only needs patience and a mind that has already started collapsing under its own weight. Porfiry never produces the proof. He does not need to. He simply waits and lets Raskolnikov's own mind supply what the evidence could not. This is the part that should unsettle you more than the murder does. The murder is the least psychologically interesting thing in the book. The interesting part is that a healthy mind left alone with itself for long enough under pressure will build the case against its owner faster than any prosecutor could. You have a version of this happening right now, about something, not a murder, something smaller that you have been quietly rehearsing an explanation for in case anyone ever asks. You already know what it is. You have already begun preparing your account of it, the way a man in a cell prepares an account before anyone has even accused him of anything. That is not innocence protecting itself. That is exhaustion, getting ahead of the pressure before the pressure has even arrived. Ask yourself plainly, if you were kept in a bare room, tired, alone for 16 hours by someone patient and calm who was certain of your guilt, how sure are you actually that you would not sign? You will answer that question quickly. Notice the speed. Certainty that arrives instantly about something that has never been tested is not confidence. It is a story you have not examined. Every person who has ever falsely confessed believed the day before exactly what you believe right now. Some of them were parents. Some of them were decorated soldiers. Some of them had never so much as raised their voice at another person before the day they signed a confession to something violent they did not do. Their belief in themselves was not weaker than yours. It was identical to yours. That is the part worth sitting with. Dostoevsky understood something about this that most people who quote him have never absorbed. He did not believe the will was weak. He believed the will was small compared to what circumstance can arrange around it. He spent 4 years in a labor camp watching men he considered decent do things under pressure he would never have predicted from meeting them at a dinner table. He wrote Crime and Punishment 4 years after his release, not as a warning about murderers, as a warning about the ordinary machinery of a mind under strain, which he had watched operate at close range for 4 years straight. This is the point where most explanations tell you how to protect yourself. Stay silent. Ask for a lawyer. Know your rights. That advice is true, and it will not save you because the mechanism does not operate on the part of you that knows the rules. It operates on the part of you that simply wants the room to end. Knowledge does not silence that want. It only makes you more articulate while you give in to it. Consider Raskolnikov once more. He is intelligent. He is a former law student. He understands exactly how interrogation works from the outside better than almost anyone in the novel. None of that knowledge stops him. It only gives him better sentences to use while he collapses. You are reading this thinking your intelligence would be different. It would not be. Intelligence is not the variable that decides this. Exhaustion is. So here is the actual question, and it is not about him anymore. If you were placed in that room and you did not do it, how many hours do you actually believe you would last before the truth stopped mattering more than the silence did? You said a number just now. Notice that you have never once tested it. You have never sat in that chair. You have only sat in rooms comfortable enough that holding the truth cost you nothing. That is not virtue. That is an easy room, mistaken for a strong will. Somewhere, right now, someone with a will you would have called strong is sitting in a hard room and is about to sign a paper that is not true. They believed, right up until the hour it happened, that this could not be them. That belief did not protect them. It only meant they never prepared for the version of themselves that eventually signed. Dostoevsky never tells you how to avoid this room. He only shows you with total conviction that the room exists and that it is built out of ordinary hours, not extraordinary cruelty. That is where the novel leaves you. No resolution about what you would do. Only the fact that you have never actually been asked. You will close this thinking about him, about Raskolnikov, about the men in Cassin's study, about someone else's room. That is the easier place to leave your attention. It was never actually about him. You do not get a number for how many hours you would last. Nobody does until the room is real, and by then the number has already stopped being yours to choose. If this is the first time you have sat with that thought, the channel is called Dark Psyche. There is more here, and none of it will let you off easily. Consider the false confession you have already made somewhere smaller, a meeting where you agreed you were wrong before you had finished thinking it through. That was the same mechanism, wearing a smaller coat. You called it keeping the peace. It was the same collapse at a lower voltage, and you paid it out in the same currency, the truth, for the relief of not being looked at anymore. Dostoevsky did not write this to warn you about interrogation rooms. He wrote it because he had watched men in Siberia confess to things they had not done, simply to end the waiting. The waiting is the weapon, not the accusation, not even the threat. The empty hour where your own mind is left alone with the charge, free to rehearse it until it feels true. You have felt that hour, not in a cell, in a delayed reply to a message, in a silence after you said something you cannot unsay, in the space before the verdict of someone else's face. Your mind fills silence with guilt before it fills it with facts. This is not a flaw in you specifically. It is what a mind does when it has been built to survive a tribe, not a courtroom. The tribe did not need you innocent. It needed the matter closed. A confession closes it faster than a defense ever could, and your instincts were shaped by tribes, not by justice. So here is what your mind actually does under pressure, in order, every time. First, it searches for the fastest exit. Then it calls that exit the truth. Then it forgets it was ever searching. It does not feel like collapse from the inside. It feels like clarity. That is the part nobody tells you. The moment before you give up the truth, your own mind will feel unusually calm. That calm is the tell. Real conviction, held under real pressure, does not feel peaceful. It feels like effort. When the giving up arrives dressed as peace, it has already won. You will not recognize it as it happens. Nobody does. That is not a failure of intelligence. It is a failure of vantage point, and vantage point cannot be argued with in advance. This is where the story stops being about a man in a Petersburg tenement with an axe under his coat. It was never really about him. It was a room you could be put in. You built a version of yourself just now reading this. Who would have held out? Who would have known better? That version was constructed in comfort, and comfort was never the test. You cannot test that version. You will never be handed the room, the hours, the isolation, and the exhaustion in a controlled dose to see what survives. The test only runs once, for real. So the honest position is not confidence. It is uncertainty, held without flinching. You do not know what you would do. Sitting with that, instead of resolving it, is the only adult response available. Every system that has ever wanted a confession has known this about you before you knew it about yourself. That is not paranoia. That is documented, repeated, and still working exactly as designed. It works on juries. It works on interrogation rooms. It works on marriages, on friendships, on a manager who only needs you to agree the mistake was yours so the meeting can end. None of this is a call to arm yourself against every accusation you will ever face. Most of them will be fair. The point is narrower and colder than that. The point is that your certainty about your own future conduct is worth less than you have been treating it. It is a story you tell about yourself, not a measurement of yourself. That story has never been tested, and it is doing a great deal of work for you. It is the thing that lets you sleep, judge, and forgive yourself in advance for a crisis that has not happened yet. Take that away and what is left? Not despair, just an accurate account of what you are, which is a mind under conditions, not a fixed character standing outside them. You do not get to know the number of hours. You do not get to know the version of you that would have held. What you get is the choice to stop pretending you already do. That is not a comfortable place to end a video. It is not supposed to be. Comfortable is what you were doing before you opened this one. Dark psyche does not close this out for you. Sit with it as long as it takes. There will be another room waiting here when you are ready to walk back in.